It's possible and easy to argue that every video game character has superpowers. They can respawn or at the very least load a previous save and try again. They can often jump supernaturally high, heal wounds by eating food, and accomplish tasks impossible to the average non-fictional person. Not that non-fictional people are useless, but we do take severe falling damage. I think we'd all agree though that some superpowers are just better than others. And today, for whatever reason, I decided to make a definitive, very serious, and well thought out list of the top 10 best uses of preternatural abilities in video games. That's right, that includes every video game of all time. Obviously, this isn't just my opinion. I consulted everyone in the entire world while you were asleep. The worst use of superpowers on the list, at number 10, Destiny and its Guardians. I mean, that's still pretty good. It beats all the games I didn't put on the list. Your powers in the Destiny series aren't magical necessarily, and they aren't technologically based. Therefore, they are superpowers. You get one grenade ability, one melee ability, and one big super, each themed around the element and character archetype of your choosing. Here you can see my majestic Titan. Look at how beautiful he is for a moment, by the way. I have a lot of problems with Destiny 2 and its predecessor, but this series has a lot going for it, most of all how graphically beautiful it is and how well it plays. If there were more of an emphasis on the use of these powers, I might have put it at a higher spot on the list, but at the end of the day, as it stands, it is just a grenade, a melee attack, and occasionally, once in a while, you can make your adversaries bathe in a maelstrom of incineration delivered via exploding conjured hammer. And for that, it deserves a place on here somewhere. What could be more powerful than a Guardian's Light? Well, what if I told you there was a superhero in gaming who could use what appears to be sonar to see through walls, pinpoint enemies, and then dispose of them John Wick style with just some scissors and tape? That's right. At number 9, I present to you Joel's Bat Vision from The Last of Us. The ability to see through walls is pervasive through most of the stealth genre at this point, but for some reason I always felt like Joel's powers were intended to be more of a supernatural origin. I mean, think about it. Does this look like he's just concentrating really hard to you? Obviously not. If it's a superpower for Daredevil, it's a superpower for Joel. It is clear as day that Joel has tapped into the arcane forces of the cordyceps spores, and in a very Albert Wesker-like move, he has attempted to incorporate and conquer the pathogen. Godspeed, you absolute scientific monster. While I do believe this one is technically a superpower in games, perhaps one which deserves to be placed even higher, it feels a little bit like cheating. So at number 8, being a Saiyan in insert Dragon Ball Z game here. Pick whichever one you want. I chose to go with the recent DBZ Kakarot, but any game that makes you feel like Goku is completely acceptable as a replacement. Do I seriously need to explain this at all? What about this isn't super? I mean, I feel like I shouldn't even talk about this too much. Have you seen any group of person-shaped creatures firing more lasers from their hands than this? No? Then as my personal god, Tim Rogers would say, "Me neither, cowboy." That's not how he sounds. And here we get into an uncomfortable space where all these games implement superpowers astonishingly well, but I decided this was a list themed around chronological descent, and it's with that spirit in mind that I reveal number 7. The Vault Hunters of Borderlands. Borderlands has always had great supers, but in the past they were much more infrequently available and seem to affect your overall gameplay loop far less than they do now. The Siren in particular has always been exciting to play, and I love the lore around them and their flashier, more paranormal abilities. Borderlands 3, the most recent entry in the series, sees the introduction of Zane, and with it, one of my favorite uses of teleportation in all of games. He can even replace his grenade with another ability. Very Destiny-like, except better than anything in that game. All 4 playable characters have their own extremely diverse skill trees that make each new power gained along the way feel extremely important and well integrated into gameplay. The only reason the Vault Hunters don't place higher on my list is because of the primary focus on shooting, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not a superpowers thing. A game that I feel focuses slightly more on powers, for example, is number 6. Bioshock and its plasmids, or vigors, depending on your point of view. In the Bioshock games, you don't have a cooldown. Instead, your use of each power is regulated by its cost and your total mana. I mean salts, or whatever. It's not magic. If it was magic, it couldn't be on the list. It is absolutely a superpower. These metaphysical mayhem-causing bursts of violence are treated on equal footing to your guns and or melee weapon, and feels like an essential part of the experience. The way they're built to interact with each environment and each other is impressive. It's something you use often, but not so often that you feel overpowered. However, so long as you keep an eye on your meter that does not contain magic, work in some bullet propelling and occasionally mollywops to the face region, there's a lot of fun to be had, and a lot of skin boiling to do. At numero 5, I decided to type the words, Mass Effect. The biotics of the Mass Effect series are higher than Bioshock and Borderlands because despite being bonkers and making no sense occasionally, they at least offer some explanation to how biotics work. It's genuine science fiction, and in my opinion, it's a very well thought out way to give players superpowers. They're not all tech-based, and there's certainly no signs of magic, so this one's as legit as it gets. The ability to map powers to the button of your choosing, the amazing variety of the aforementioned powers, and frequency of their use in battle are all things I'm eternally grateful for. The third-person shooting again feels much more like an option in this series, which is good, because it's maybe not the best out there in that regard. But the powers are mostly pretty unique, and the game world is built and explained so well that I can't help but feeling a strong sense of fondness in my brain memories towards the Mass Effect games and its biotic-based combat. Number 4 on my list is Control. One of the most impressive experiences I've had with a controller in hand. I'm not sure how to classify her abilities. I guess it's fair to say Jessie has an advanced form of telekinesis that also stretches slightly to include telepathy, and whatever this is. Neato. I didn't put Control so high on my list just because it's fun to hurl office supplies at interdimensional spirit monsters, even though it undoubtedly is. I ranked it so highly because of how cohesive Jessie's powers are, and how much thought was obviously put into not only designing her abilities and how they interact with objects, but also how to make each power feel right. The devs did a great job of making launching a chair feel like launching a chair, floating feel like floating, and falling feel like my balls have receded up into my chest cavity. If it were a list solely about telekinesis, I think Control would definitely be at number 1. But for superpowers as a whole, there are 3 games I feel like just did it a little bit better in my personal experience. And with that in mind, at number 3, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. What? Being a Jedi is totally a superpower. I know some of the powers are very similar in our last entry, Control, and maybe even a little better sometimes, but what Control lacks in lightsabers, Jedi Fallen Order makes up for in lightsabers. The progression system is well built in. I love that I can regain the Force via melee combat and how much these powers affect gameplay. By the end of your Jedi journey, it becomes hard to imagine what that first level felt like back before you could use your various Force-related murder techniques. I mean powers. The abilities in this game are extremely fun to use, and as a certified bespectacled human who has been called a nerd multiple times and seen every numbered release of the saga I've lived through in theaters, I approve. You do the push, you do the pull, you throw the saber, it comes back to you. You guys get how Star Wars works by now, you don't need me, let's just move on. The second to last entry and hardest decision I had to make in my number assignment, at number 2, the Infamous series. The first Infamous was an awesome game, the way you shoot lightning from your hands as opposed to the bullets so typical of a third-person shooter, the karma system, the way your powers grow and expand in scope and potency. It was brilliant for its time, and it was really impressive. Now in 2020 though, if I had to point to an excellent example of what a superhero game could be like, that game in my opinion would be Second Son. I don't understand the hate it receives in any way. I love this game, the variety of different powers means 4 times the options you had as the lightning-based Cole. You still third-person shoot things, you still float around by holding X, but now you can do so in 4 unique flavors, or I guess really only 3, let's be honest. The graphics are beautiful, the main character is voiced by Troy Baker, and the conduits sorta make sense, in a very superhero movie, got my powers from an explosion sort of a way. All that, and they handle super speed better than most games I can think of in recent memory, so yeah. Number 2. Pretty high up there. In fact, there's only one reason the conduits of Infamous don't top my list, and that reason is, in my opinion, the best use of superpowers that I have ever encountered thus far in a game. Number 1, Marvel's Spider-Man. Why? Because it has Spider-Man in it. Thanks for watching! The web swinging feels the best it has since the GameCube era. Punching bad guys off a building conveys Spider-Man's super strength, as well as his thinly veiled propensity towards murder, and the gadgets. Oh, the gadgets. I know those can't technically count as part of his superpowers, but even if you take his webs away, his ability to maneuver his body by manipulating those webs is nothing short of superhuman. That would rip my arms off. Plus his speed, reflexes, and fascinating inability to be harmed by gravity. Spider-Man just has it all. Ever since Tobey Maguire first yelled Yahoo, I have felt a deep pain in my heart that I would never actually be Spider-Man. It hurt to consider that I would never feel the wind pick up on the downswing, or the elation of being flung onward at the end of an upswing, that I would never run on rooftops, stop bad guys, or climb walls. And you know what, guys? Playing this game, the best of its kind there has ever been, I can finally say this: I still don't feel like Spider-Man. But this game can make you feel like a dude playing a dope Spider-Man game in your room, rotting with not the faintest possible glimmer of sunlight, no missed calls or text, and completely alone. And you know what? That's close enough for me. You did it, everyone. You made it to the end. If you didn't enjoy my list, please know that while I did put some effort into placement and game selection, these are all my opinions, and my opinions are only based on the games I've personally played. If you can think of a game that deserves to be here, please consider leaving a comment to let me know. I always need new games to play anyway. I hope this was either somewhat entertaining or helped you decide what to play next, as I have a lot of fun making these. And as always, thanks for watching.